Thank you all for coming, and those of you in live stream land, thank you for watching. I am Lois Romano. I am the editor of Washington Post Live, a longtime political correspondent, and now doing our live journalism platform. Well, we always knew that Ohio was very important in American politics. What happens in Ohio never stays in Ohio. But you guys have really outdone yourselves this time. First debate, your governor not only is running, but he is now soaring in the polls. He's number 2 in New Hampshire. And you have the convention. So it's actually a very big moment for you all, and we're all very excited about it. We have a terrific program for you tonight that's going to talk about all this. We're very grateful to Jones Day for hosting us and also for sponsoring this. And before I turn you over to the partner in charge, Chris Kelly, I want to answer one question that you haven't asked, but it's the question I get everywhere I go, and it's this. How has the Washington Post changed since Amazon founder Jeff Bezos purchased us 2 years ago? This is how we've changed. The Washington Post is, by all objective measures, the fastest growing online news site in America today. Every month we've grown. We're up 65% in our traffic, and our traffic, our uniques, I think it's called, are 80 million global and local. So we engage our audience, and we're hoping to engage all of you tonight. 2 things we'd love you to do. We'd love you to tweet your questions and your comments to hashtag 2016 Pregame. Also, before you got here tonight, maybe at 5:15, 5:30, you might have gotten an email that has a link on it. We'd love you to participate in a Bing Pulse poll. There's just 3 questions on it, and there it is. And I'm supposed to give you the link, too, in case you didn't get the email. It's wapo.st/2016pulse. It's just for fun. It's not scientific. So without further ado, we want you all to have a good time. It's a great crowd. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Chris Kelly, the partner in charge of Jones Day in Cleveland.
Welcome to our humble abode. I hope you enjoyed the reception. I know many of you wanted to stay there a little longer, but we had to get going. I am pleased tonight to welcome first all of our out-of-town guests. We trust that this is just the beginning of your interest in Cleveland, and we look forward to welcoming you again over the course of the next year, and especially during the convention coming up. I'd also like to welcome our political and media friends, and I saw a number of them out there at the reception tonight. Thank you really for making the time to be with us. But a special welcome to our clients. You are part of one of the foundational pillars of this country, what we affectionately call corporate America in our law firm. It has made us the greatest nation the world has ever seen. Without you, we simply could not put on events like this one. In fact, we couldn't have these offices. And we relish every opportunity to get together with you. We are sincerely grateful for your trust year in and year out. And as I look around the room, your friendship as well. Jones Day opened its first office here in Cleveland back in 1893. Today we are an international law firm with 42 offices and over 2,400 lawyers serving our clients around the world. Despite our growth, we have retained our deep roots in this community, as well as our commitment to civic engagement, which has long been part of our firm's fabric. Our commitment to the region and our communities is why we made a significant contribution to the city of Cleveland to try to bring the Republican National Convention here, and why we serve as one of the 4 co-chairs on the host committee. It is also why we think it is very important to be partnering with the Washington Post to bring you this preview of tomorrow's debate and the overall presidential campaign. With the majority of Americans believing, for the first time that any of us can ever remember, that we are on the wrong track, that things are not going well, and that our kids are not going to be there and have the same opportunities that we have, the 2016 election could be quite possibly the most consequential we have faced. Quite simply, The country is faced with a number of very significant issues, which will require serious but optimistic leadership. As I said to Lois earlier, the world needs adults. As has been the case throughout our firm's history, Jones Day lawyers are at the forefront of many of these issues. Indeed, shortly you will be hearing from two of them, Ben Ginsberg and Mike Carvin, on the topic of health care. It is our hope that events like tonight's, and others like it over the next year that we intend to do, will provide a positive contribution towards solutions to problems in ways that enable our clients, and therefore the nation, to thrive and grow. Now let's get to work. Dan Balls, where are you? Chief Correspondent for the Washington Post.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you. I'm Dan Baltz with the Washington Post. With me are Kellyanne Conway, founder of the polling company, Aaron Pickrell, one of the leading, if not the leading Democratic strategist based in Ohio, and Michael Steele, the former chairman of the Republican National Committee, well known to everybody from his commentary on television. We want to talk about the debate. We want to obviously talk about Donald Trump, and we want to talk hopefully about a few things other than just Donald Trump. Let me start, Michael, with this question for you. Donald Trump is now the clear leader in the national polls and in many of the state polls. Mm-hmm. Does that make him the candidate to beat? And if not, who is?
Oh, I think it makes him the candidate to catch up to. The idea being that he's creating some separation, in the numbers. But the question is, how do you begin to get into the space that he is clearly occupying with the American people, and certainly with the base of the party? A lot of folks have wasted, I think, a lot of energy trying to figure out when Donald Trump's balloon's going to pop, when he's going to get out of the race. This is just a national nightmare that will end soon, and all of that crazy talk. Instead of trying to understand what is it he is saying that is resonating with voters. What is it he is doing? How is he doing it that is allowing folks to gravitate towards him? And I think that's going to be the challenge beginning right now for a lot of the other candidates, to see how they, A, understand what's going on, and then B, fill that space with their message, their vision, their thoughts about the future of the country, and to put the pressure on Trump to then go to the next level on substance, on policy, et cetera.
Kellyanne, Senator Rand Paul said recently that this has been a moment of temporary insanity within the Republican Party. How would you describe it? And again, to the same question I asked Chairman Steele, is Trump the person to beat? And if not, who is?
Donald Trump, first of all, thank you very much for having me to Jones Day, to the Washington Post, and to all of you. Dan, I think Trump is the person to study more than the person to beat. And there's been so much hand-wringing over how did he get here, when will he leave, what will hopefully make him deflate. As a political professional, you want to study why his voters are his voters. And who are their second and third choices? That's something at my firm we've been doing with great earnestness recently. Where will the others go if, in fact, he decides to leave the race, or if, as voters often do, they decide to poke the other fruit and flirt around a little bit. Remember, in 2012, 7 different Republicans held the top spot at some time or another. And we were always told that's because it was a much weaker field. Mm-hmm. No, it's also because of voters. Voters know, especially this time, they have many choices, they have loads of time, and there's no rush to coalesce around 1 or 2 people who the wizards in Washington tell them are the front runners, quote, who can win. I haven't even heard the word electability in the month since Donald Trump started to rise in the polls. The thing about Trump that fascinates me is 2 things. One is how he got where he is to begin with. He checks many voter boxes. If you just listen to what voters want in a candidate, they will tell you, I want someone who's been successful outside of politics, somebody who owes nobody anything in Washington or elsewhere, someone who speaks their mind, who says things I don't want to say but that I feel. But what fascinates me about him on the other side of the ledger is the reasons that candidates are usually pushed out of a race don't seem to apply to him. You can't raise enough money. You can't get traction in the polls. You can't get traction on an issue. You can't get any earned media. I mean, none of this applies to him. That's how people usually exit the race sooner or later. And so I believe he'll stay in it as long as he wants to stay in it. It's probably up to him. These polls change over time. People start to study things substantively. Voters love people who have never held a job outside of politics, but they keep on electing people with experience in politics because somehow that matters to him. The final thing I'll say about Donald Trump is I believe part of why he ended up running this time as opposed to all the times he flirted with it and did not is because people called him a circus act, a clown, a joke. For what purpose? First of all, it's not that nice. But secondly, who are some of these 22-year-old bloggers that work for unprofitable outlets, insulting a guy who employs 22,000 people and has made something of his life? So if you want to treat someone a certain way, maybe you better ignore them next time because you, as my grandmother used to say, be careful what you wish for.
Aaron, as you've watched this Trump phenomenon over the last 60 days, what has it told you about the Republican Party?
It's fascinating. It truly is. I think one of the amazing things is it's not like Donald Trump has a bunch of policy positions that are way off the rest of the Republican field, whether it be climate change or immigration or women's health or anything else. Donald Trump is basically aligned with the majority of the Republican field right now. I think he has a fairly amazing way of presenting himself. I think he has the ability to basically get wall-to-wall TV coverage, and just watching how he goes about it, it's like, here's my cell phone, call it, which he's basically giving a free robocall to himself because all of these people are calling his cell phone because it's splattered all over the internet and they think it's cool. He calls up reporters and berates them. He attacks the Republicans by name. He attacks Republican icons by name, but continues to just plow ahead. And I think the fact that he has a 2-to-1 advantage in the national polls over the next, which is kind of amazing to me. It's not like Donald Trump is just kind of there. He's dominating, and I think that it shows that there's a lot of uncertainty on what the Republicans want nationally. I mean, the whole national poll thing, and it's not the way the process works, but it's really going to be interesting to see how he goes forward. And I've talked to friends of mine in Iowa, and Donald Trump is making good headway in Iowa as well. It's not like he's just this national phenomenon. He's actually organizing in places that matter for the nominating process.
Do you take him seriously as a threat to be the nominee of the party?
Yes, definitely.
You do?
Yeah, the guy has basically unlimited money. He's got 100% name ID. He's got a 2-to-1 polling advantage, and he's the guy who's running his Iowa caucus program, ran Rick Santorum's program. I think he was Rick Santorum's caucus director.
Right.
Santorum won Iowa, so it's not like he's just got this hodgepodge team out there. I think that he's very credible, but it's at the end of the day, he's not, from a policy perspective, he's not way out of line with what the other folks are saying. So how do they catch up to him?
Answer this question if you can. In what ways over the last month or 6 weeks has your assessment of Donald Trump as a politician changed?
How's it changed? I think probably, I think the level of seriousness, despite what you may see on television from time to time, having known him and worked with him in my capacity as chairman of the National Party, but also as a state chairman in Maryland and county chairman as lieutenant governor. So in various political roles, the seriousness with which he's approaching this, outside of the glare of the cameras, I think is really a substantive change in his approach. And it really goes back to what you were saying about, how he's coming into this and is not a fly-by-night venture from. He's serious about this. And what he's doing is he's bringing an unconventional approach to a very conventional process. He's bringing an out-of-the-box mindset, a business mindset, because business, for all of its conservative nature, really does kind of push the edges and goes outside the box. What technology does, that's what, a lot of things we see happening in the economy oftentimes is from people pushing the envelope to go to the next level. That's what he's doing politically, and we've never seen it before, not seen it done this way. And of course, for the folks in Washington, it's a freak show. But for the country, it's like refreshing.
Yes.
Because it's honest, it's authentic. I've been in rooms with Democrats, I've been in rooms with independents and Republicans, and I hear the same word over and over again with him. He's authentic, he's real. When you have someone, a caucus goer in Iowa or someone in New Hampshire, a blue-collar worker say, yeah, that billionaire is just like me? Hello. There's your race. And that goes back to what I was saying before. If I'm a Republican candidate for the presidency standing on the stage with a billionaire whom everyone is viewing just like them, I need to figure out what that magic juice is and drink some of it.
So we're going to mostly talk about Republicans here tonight, but you raised an interesting point. As we've watched the Trump phenomenon, there's something else that's been happening on the Democratic side, which is the rise of Bernie Sanders, but also a deterioration in the image of Hillary Clinton, who's perceived as the dominant, almost, likely frontrunner for the nomination. Aaron, how serious are those concerns as you watch the other side of this, and what could Hillary Clinton learn from Donald Trump about authenticity?
I mean, I think that, voters want to, and I think that this is where Hillary is already. I mean, voters want to hear answers to the questions that they're concerned about. You need to talk about the issues that they care about. And that's what Hillary's talking about right now. While I feel like on the Democratic side, they're talking a lot about income inequality and college affordability and issues like that. On the Republican side right now, it's basically focused on Donald Trump and what crazy thing Donald Trump has said. Are we going to build a 50-foot wall along the Mexican border or a 25-foot wall along the Mexican border? I mean, those are the sort of issues that I think Trump is being pushed into the forefront, and it's allowing Hillary to show that she has serious answers for serious questions. I think
But why is the trust issue going downhill for her at the same time?
I think that the more
I know you don't speak for the campaign.
The more that she's out there and the more people see her, the more they're going to remember what they love about her. I mean, I think that, in Iowa, she won the primary in Iowa by 10 points. She's beloved here. I think she's going to do extraordinarily well. I think part of it is it's such an early point in the process, and she has the bright shining light almost solely on her, and it's easy to sort of poke holes in her candidacy at 16 months before. She's in a primary, but it's not nearly as dynamic as the Republican
Do you
primary.
mean she won Ohio? Because she lost Iowa, she came in third in Iowa.
She won Ohio, yeah.
Oh, Ohio, yeah.
She
came in third.
Yeah,
She lost
sorry,
to
yeah.
Barack Obama and John Edwards.
Kellyanne, answer that same question. What could she learn from
No,
that?
I thought Aaron did a really good college try in trying to resuscitate Hillary Clinton. But folks, I mean, there's tripartisan concern about Hillary Clinton in many of these polls, and there's a reason for that. She also has, look at her versus Donald Trump. He's got 100% name ID, as Michael Steele points out, and it's benefiting him. She has 100% name ID and seems to have nowhere else to go to define herself. And I just want her to survive long enough to be the nominee, Dan. I get worried that it might actually be somebody who's a little bit more accessible, joyful on the trail.
But that's a different view than Republicans had 6 months ago.
Oh, absolutely, but she seems to be a different candidate. She hasn't worn well, and I mean that as a complete sterile cold analysis. Why? You have the trust deficit. So political professionals in here, candidates can learn how to become better debaters. They can learn how to answer questions more crisply, get your roadmap out. They can start connecting with grassroots better. I don't know. I simply don't know how you make up a trust deficit. I don't know where you go to get that integrity, that sense of honesty back from the voters. And it's in everybody's polling, as you point out. Not Republican polling, everybody's polling. The other thing about Hillary Clinton that fascinates me is what normally attracts people, male and female voters, to female candidates doesn't seem to apply to her. So normally people say, oh, a female candidate. I've never heard of her before. She's running for Congress, mayor, senator, whether it's Patty Murray years ago as the PTA mom, or it's Joni Ernst last year. She's fresh, she's new. That doesn't apply to Hillary Clinton. Secondly, people will say, I think women on balance are just less corruptible. They're more ethical. Doesn't really apply here. Third, you see that in the honesty and integrity measures. Third, people will say women candidates tend to be a little bit more nurturing, a little bit more warm and accessible. So she's not seen that way, as you know, in the polling. I don't discount her or dismiss her or underestimate her at all. I think she will have a ton of money, a great deal of support, all the king's horses, all the king's men of the Democratic Party. But the Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Donald Trump factors show that nobody's voters are safe, and you can't take any of them for granted. Yeah. And I also just think that voters want to see more than people say, oh, the Republicans have too many candidates, it's so silly. Whoever the nominee is going to be very tested and very poked. The person's going to be extremely vetted. And I think that benefits. I like our odds this time because this is the first time the Republican Party, if Mrs. Clinton is the nominee, Secretary Clinton is the nominee, we all of a sudden can play role reversal. The Democrats have done a masterful job for 60 years of elevating and electing transformational, generational type of figures who were all told, by the way, you can't win, don't even bother. JFK ran and won. Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, even Jimmy Carter was a relatively young man when he came into the White House with a 9-year-old daughter. So their candidates never listen to this nonsense of, you can't win, don't even bother. And they elevate and indeed elect these generational, transformational candidates. We don't, and we may be able to this time.
You talk about the poking that will begin soon. It could begin tomorrow night.
Oh, yeah.
Michael, if you are any of the other candidates, what's your strategy tomorrow night? What should be those?
Oh, this is easy. That's easy. Stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Let Donald Trump go wherever Donald Trump's going to go. Stay in your lane, because you can't compete with that. You cannot compete with the unknown.
You not engage?
No, I wouldn't say don't engage. Engage.
I mean, it's easier said than done to say stay in your lane.
Right. Well, no. It's easier than you think, because it's all about discipline. If you are a John Kasich, it is not in your benefit to come out on that stage and directly take on Donald Trump, because you have your own message, your state, your leadership, what you've done in Congress. So you've got a story and a narrative that you can share that translates into policy, that translates politically. You don't need to go and improve that you're mano a mano with Donald Trump.
But many of these candidates have already gone after Donald Trump in different ways.
They have the bruises on their butt to show for it.
But, I mean, would they not stand up for that tomorrow night?
Well, again, what I'm saying is, I'm not saying don't engage. What I'm saying is there's no need for you to go and poke him first. I mean, Donald Trump has even said himself, I'm not going in looking for a fight. So if you take me on, I'm going to give as good as I get, probably better. So the idea is stay in your lane, lay out your message and your vision. If in the course of that conversation, Donald Trump makes an offhanded remark or a direct remark about you or something you said, respond to that, but respond to it contextually. Do not get off the ramp and go off into the wilderness somewhere, because that's a rabbit hole you don't want to go down.
From a Democrat's perspective, what are you going to be looking for most tomorrow night?
I mean, I think that from the Trump perspective, is anyone going to be willing to call out when he says something crazy? Like if he attacks someone, like, is anyone going to be willing to stand up to him, basically? Because it does seem like the majority of the Republican field is terrified of Donald Trump. They're terrified of his voters. They're terrified, is he going to run as an independent? Can we take him on? What's going to happen?
Call him a loser.
Right. Yeah, is he going to attack them? Is he going to give out their cell phone number on TV? And they're going to get a bunch of prank calls. But is anyone going to be willing to stand up for that and highlight why he's wrong? Which I think
Maybe someone will call his cell phone number from the stage.
Right. That would be a fantastic tactic, I think. But I think I think I'll be really interested to see how Governor Kasich does. I mean, it's, Governor Kasich's on his home turf. The fact that he was able to make the debate, I think, was a win for him. I think that he probably already won the debate just by being included. I think it could have been, embarrassing to have a debate in Cleveland and not be able to be on the stage. It was a smart use of a couple $1 million in New Hampshire to help get him there. But I think that it'll be really interesting to see how he does and to see how the field takes on Trump.
Kellyanne, what would be more problematic for everyone on that stage tomorrow night? Not just short term in terms of who's declared the winner or loser of the debate, but over a longer period of time. A slashing, strident Donald Trump, or a civil, contained, polite Donald Trump?
The latter would be worse for them, because that puts the burden on people to go and grab their own headlines and make their own luck, much as he has in the last month, and make sure that in the coverage of the immediate coverage, perhaps on Twitter, other social media, Live, Washington Post Live, and then, of course, all the coverage the next day and into the weekend, it's easy to ignore half of the field, even non-purposely, because there are 10 people. So if you feel like you want to show the two that absolutely bombed, didn't have much to say, looked a little unconfident answering a certain policy question or two, and then you want to show the people who surprised and who probably improved their position, you're basically ignoring the other 5. So I think the goal for them is you made it into the top 10, but make sure you make it into the next round of the top 5 or 4 who are talked about and have shelf life after those next couple days. I think you do that, Dan, irrespective of which Donald Trump shows up tomorrow.
Yeah. That's why you stay in your lane.
The Trump the Trump surge has, for the time being, kind of suppressed what everyone thought would be the dynamic of this nomination process, which is the establishment versus kind of the populist and conservative insurgency. What's the state of that at this point?
It is in some degree, I guess, chaos, which I think is wonderful. I think the party needs to have this sort of earth-shattering moment where it comes to grips with its identity and its messengers and who has the message and who can be that messenger. And a lot of the angst that's been built up over the years is now beginning to play itself out. You see the same on the Democrat side. The Dems are, they're kind of like, oh, no, everything's fine. We're doing well. Whistling past this graveyard, and not a big problem. But there is a problem. You've got in New Hampshire now, Bernie Sanders is within 6 points of Hillary Clinton in New Hampshire, and that trend line bodes well for Bernie. And you see it played out on the Republican side. So what does it say, not about the politicians and the political party so much, it says a lot, but it says more about where the people are. It says more about what's pushing and motivating you to get to the point where you're so ticked off that you're willing, you know what, screw it. We're just going to go and do this thing wild. We're just going to go in a whole different direction. I think that's healthy and refreshing for politics right now. The country is finally waking up and saying, we're mad as hell, we're not taking it anymore, and damn it, you better listen. And they're getting everyone's attention in Washington and around the country, Democrat and Republican alike, and I think that's good.
Aaron, you know this state and this region as well as anybody in the country. Democrats have won Ohio, 4 of the last 6 elections? So they've won Pennsylvania 6 of 6, Michigan 6 of 6, Illinois 6 of 6, Wisconsin 6 of 6. As you look at this field of Republican candidates, who's the one who could put those states into play that they haven't been able to win?
And initially, I thought that Scott Walker has a certain Midwestern appeal. A lot of those are Midwestern battleground states. I think one of the fatal flaws for Scott Walker is going to be the attacks he had on labor unions in Wisconsin. I think that he will energize the labor base in a way that has never been done before, which I think will be fantastic. I think that Governor Kasich could be a formidable candidate in those states as well. I think that the battleground states that are out there, the majority of them are in the Midwest, and I think that Midwesterners, they can relate to other Midwesterners, and they can see that, I think that this person understands where I come from. I relate to the issues that they care about. They talk the same language I do. Therefore, I trust that person with my vote.
How would you see Jeb Bush in that?
It's challenging. I mean, I think that because he's kind of all over the place. His gubernatorial record is one thing. He's trying to dismiss some of the more moderate things he did as governor. He doesn't want to lose the conservative base. Is there fatigue? Is there Bush fatigue that's out there? The same thing you're talking. How's all that going to shake out? And he can't break through this field. His inability to garner any attention or any support right now is kind of fascinating to me. I mean, the fact that the friend I talked to in Iowa on my way up here, he thinks that Jeb Bush would get 4th place in Iowa right now. Dan Pfeiffer wrote a thing today saying that Jeb Bush should not run in Iowa. So getting 4th place in Iowa could be pretty close to fatal going into New Hampshire, where Kasich and Christie and others are running really hard in New Hampshire. So to get 4th and 3rd and 2nd and South, I mean, it seems really challenging for him.
We're basically out of time, and we need to move on to the next panel. But Kellyanne, I want to get a quick response from you, if I can, to this question. If the Trump thing disappeared tomorrow and we're sort of back to status quo ante, what's the biggest obstacle at this point to the Republican Party to win the general election?
The electoral map, the electoral college. And I will say that this year, Dan, because we have, Michael Steele referred to it as chaos and good for the party, which is so true, we finally have my dream election, which is that the pro-competition, pro-free market party finally has a free market competitive principle primary where people aren't already saying, she can win, he can't win. And I would always say, how do you know he can win? He's high in the polls. I'm like, yeah, I guess so. How did he get there? Everybody thinks he can win. Keeps saying it. Gets high in the polls. Plus, he raised some money. How did he raise all that money? He's high in the polls. Everybody thinks he can win. They wrote a check. And it's been this fiction of electability has been a vice around the neck of the Republican Party, in my view, because they say he can win, and then, of course, they haven't in recent years. The only way you can prove if you can or cannot win, by the way, is if you do or you don't. So it's not electability that should be the focus, it's the Electoral College. And that's the part that scares me most. I'm a Republican consultant who very much believes in the so-called blue wall, the Democratic blue wall, that the Democrats start with a certain number of Electoral College advantages. And you can't just try to go steal the other people's customers. I think you have to do what Senator Obama did in his 2008 run for president, which is find new customers. There are loads of conservatives who did not vote last time. They did not feel inspired to. Some that didn't vote in 2008. Some that aren't even registered. You have to find new customers, people who perhaps are disaffected from the system and wouldn't go for the either standard bearers, familiar names from the 90s, let's just say, in either party, and are looking for something new and fresh, but it would be the Electoral College, and I think, don't say the word electability, Republicans, focus on Electoral College now.
On that note, we will close it off. Kellyanne, Aaron,
Thank you.
Chairman Steele, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you all. I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague Kathleen Parker for the next panel.
All right.
Hey, everybody get a seat? Well, y'all are mighty quiet. Good evening. I'm Kathleen Parker, and we have a terrific panel here. I'm thoroughly intimidated by them, but I'm going to introduce them so that we can get started. On my left is Ben Ginsberg, who is a super lawyer. He is a political lawyer who is in contact with all the most important people in the world at all times. All right, how's that?
Not true, but good.
And next we have Mike Carvin, who is also a lawyer with Jones Day and is best known for having argued the two plaintiffs' cases before the U.S. Supreme Court on the Affordable Care Act. And then, not least, we have Dr. Toby Cosgrove, whom I imagine most of you know, as the president and CEO of Cleveland Clinic. Now, I don't know anything much personal about any of you, but I've been told that Mike can watch bass fishing on television for hours. Is that another Washington Times myth?
Yes.
Okay.
Only saltwater fishing.
Okay.
That's exact.
All right then. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about how the ACA is going to, I'm going to call it that, if that's all right, or Obamacare. I might slip every now and then, but I understand since this is a Republican gathering, meaning the debate, is that I'm allowed to say Obamacare every now and then. So we're going to talk about how the ACA plays out in 2016, how the candidates are going to treat it, and just what these gentlemen think of all of those ramifications. So I'm going to start with, this question goes to all three of you, but we'll start with Ben. Is it wise for the Republicans to be talking about repeal and replace after these two Supreme Court rulings and after 5 years of the health care plan being in place?
Well, first of all, thank you very much to the Washington Post for joining us at Jones Day for this. It's really great to have you here. What I would say about that is that it is wise for Republican candidates to talk about repeal and replace for any number of reasons. Tomorrow night's debate will actually provide a forum for showing ultimate contrast between a Republican position and whoever the Democratic nominee is. It's an unpopular program. It's a program that is not working terribly well, and with the inflationary costs or the increased costs of the program that are coming, it will provide an awfully good platform for Republicans to be able to contrast themselves. It's the main surrogate issue for the size of government issue that will be predominant, I think, in the campaigns, in the general election campaign. And it's an opportunity for all our candidates to be able to point out the more ways that we can help provide health care as a surrogate for government solutions.
It seems awfully hard to, well, of course, the debate, each person has about a minute to respond to any question. It seems pretty hard to lay out a plan for replacement. And I think that's one of the big obstacles for all of those candidates. What is it that you would be listening for from any of these? I know you're advising Scott Walker. What have you suggested that he do in this regard?
Without talking about any specific candidate, I think you'll see.
Sorry about
I
that.
think you'll see all the candidates wanting to be able to talk about how they can provide more affordable coverage to as many people to basically get the marketplaces working. There'll be solutions like providing insurance across state lines. The individual mandate that Michael can talk about very articulately will, of course, come up as an issue. And
All right.
it's all about the solutions that can come from a more conservative approach.
I'm going to skip Mike for just a second because
There
I
you
want. No, I'm going to come back to you, but I want to get this over to you, Toby, because you've actually had to implement the ACA. Let me ask you first, though, did you support it from the beginning?
Well, we knew that healthcare had to change, and right now it is the law of the land, and we are implementing it as fast as we can. That has substantial ramifications for us. We know that we're not going to get paid as well as we did for the things we do, so we have got to take probably 15 to 20% out of the cost of running the Cleveland Clinic, which we are well on the way to do that now. And we are expanding our coverage, and we're looking after more people, and I think we're delivering better quality.
Well, you say you're delivering better quality, but the costs are going up, and what would that mean in terms of your forecast? I mean, we're looking at higher and higher costs as we move along, aren't we not?
Well, I guess that's a very good question. When you really look at it, there's really three things that the Affordable Care Act attempted to do. First of all, they wanted to improve quality, they wanted to improve access, and they wanted to decrease cost. And I think you would have to say that there are 13 million more people covered. 90% of the people who are less than 65 are covered, so that the access has improved. Quality is really a gray zone. The number of quality metrics that there are out there, most of them have remained flat over the 5-year period that we're talking about.
What does that mean, quality metrics?
Well, the number of infections you have, the number of urinary tract infections, the number of ulcers, et cetera. And we're now reporting 123 quality metrics to the federal government each year. So there have been some changes. There's a decrease in readmissions to the hospital, and that's been driven by really two things. One, transparency, and the other, financial incentives. And we're seeing a decrease in bloodstream infections. Now, on the cost issue, it's interesting that that is probably the most controversial. Last year, healthcare inflation was at an all-time low of 2.6%. The reasons for that, I think, are very debatable. If you take, for example, along the economy, certainly had an effect with a lot of people not going to get health care. High deductible insurance also played a part in it, with people being reticent to sometimes go and get care, and more of the responsibility laid over on the individual. There was also transparency around cost, which is coming up from both, and finally the ACA and all of us who are providers looked for ways that we could begin to prepare ourselves, because we knew we were going to be paid less. Whether this is going to continue or not, I think, is the real question. The OBM says that the inflation is going to continue to go up as more people come on board and as the population ages.
Well, to that point, even though, I mean, forgetting inflation, the population aging is huge, especially with these chronic diseases that are
Yes.
so expensive to treat. As just one example, I recently attended the Alzheimer's Association meeting and was told that by mid-century, 16 million Americans would develop Alzheimer's, and that's a huge number. And the cost of that, there's virtually no treatment, and at this point, no way of preventing. So how do you cope with those kinds of numbers? And that's just one disease. I mean, how do you adapt this to those costs? I mean, we're not really.
Yeah. So let me give you even a more terrifying data on that.
Oh, good.
I thought you'd like this. If you get to be 85, your chances of having Alzheimer's is 1 in 3.
When you reach 85.
When you reach 85. Terrifying. And that has a whole social and economic effect on society, which is enormous. Now, what we're doing right now is we're trying to look at how we can standardize care to make it more efficient. But you're not going to be able to just drive efficiency you're going to have to actually reduce the burden of disease. And the way you begin to reduce the burden of disease, for example, is with obesity and smoking. Obesity right now, 2/3 of the United States are overweight.
I saw.
And it accounts for 10% of the healthcare costs in the United States. And that leads to diabetes, that leads to cancers, that leads to joint replacements, and the list goes on and on and on. So we are not going to be able to control the cost of healthcare in the United States until we begin to deal with these things that wind up causing chronic diseases. And by the way, Alzheimer's is one of those things that also is affected by lack of exercise, et cetera.
All right, well, I want to come back to that point about how we make people more well and less inclined to eat delicious things. But Mike, to you, so what is your view of the repeal and replace? I didn't give you a chance to respond to that.
Well, to pick up on the 2 points that have already been made, I would think that in addition to basic Republican principles, the reason for the unpopularity of the ACA is going to be because of these increased premium costs. Most people are projecting a 20 to 40% increase next year for a variety of reasons, including the fact that the Act's subsidization of insurance companies is going to cease in 2016, and it's going to go up even higher in 2017. So in October of 2016, a lot of people are going to be affected in a very important way on something that they're really going to remember, which is they're going to be paying more premiums for a plan with a very high deductible, with a very narrow range of doctors to choose from, and probably being pushed out of a plan that they, in some cases, were not that unhappy with. So I think it presents a real opportunity for the Republicans to make a basic Republican pitch, which is that we should be empowering consumers, not bureaucrats in Washington. And the principal means of doing that will also reduce costs, because instead of buying these sort of very elaborate plans that the ACA makes you buy, you can get catastrophic insurance, you can buy it across state lines, you could have malpractice reform, and all kinds of things that, because of some market discipline and because of some rational means, you're not only going to be providing people with what they need, which is insurance tailored to them rather than to some unrealistic ideal, which is frankly designed to have healthy 30-year-olds subsidize unhealthy older people like me, because they're paying the same premiums without accounting for these kinds of efficiencies and real prognostications about your future health status. And if you could get that kind of reform in, it wouldn't be a dramatic change in the infrastructure. You could keep, for example, the exchanges. You just wouldn't make them based on subsidies being handed out from Washington. You might have to go to a situation where the consumers have more skin in the game. One of the reasons I think that healthcare costs have increased is because nobody really ever pays for medical providers. It's usually some third party, the employer or Washington or the Medicare, Medicaid system. If you had people thinking about it more conscientiously, not only in terms of the health to prevent going to a medical provider, but searching out the kind of medical needs they really have, that could drive costs down. And I don't think this is an ideological issue. I mean, I just think this is arithmetic. If we don't get on top of the health insurance costs in this country, it's going to drive out everybody, every kind of other initiative that you'd want. They're talking about $1 trillion in Medicare alone in 2022. So these 85-year-old people with Alzheimer's are really going to stop us from investing in anything that you want, more education, more missiles across the dynamic. So I not only think it's good politics, I really think it's good public policy. And the sooner we wait to deal with this problem, the longer we wait to deal with this problem, the more extreme it's going to be.
All right, so Ben, you, when President Obama first was trying to sell the ACA, one of the things he promised was, he said that he would have preferred a single-payer system, but it wasn't politically possible at that time. So just switching parties here for a minute, do you think that Hillary Clinton is a closeted single-payer person and will have to come out of the closet in order to move a little bit left?
Well, one of the wonderful things about this campaign is she'll have to articulate her own position. Chris Cillizza, your very own Chris Cillizza, had a fascinating column in the past week or so that said it's been 179 years since a Democrat was elected for 3 consecutive terms, if you don't count FDR getting reelected 4 times. And so nothing screams third Obama term like Hillary Clinton having to take a position on Obamacare. There, I said Obamacare too. And so I'm not sure if she's a believer in single-payer systems or not, but she's going to have to articulate the position. And the way she takes on the unpopularity of the ACA and deals with having to separate herself or embrace Barack Obama will be one of the great things to watch in the campaign.
So I want to go back to obesity as a national health problem. I think when we were speaking earlier, you said something about how the private sector was going to have to pitch in and sort of push people toward wellness. This sounds slightly spooky to me. How do you mean that?
Well, what we did is at the Cleveland Clinic, we decided we would begin to model what was appropriate health care. And so we stopped hiring smokers, which, by the way, is illegal. It is legal.
You cannot.
I checked with Jones Day to find out if it was legal or not.
How do you do that? How do you say if you smoke in your own home, then you can't work here?
No, we check them and then, when they come in for nicotine as part of their drug testing when we hire them. So our smoking rate across the country is about 20%. Ours is 5%.
Because everybody wants to work at Cleveland Clinic.
Well, you know, the thing that, you'll laugh, the thing that we were worried the most about was the biggest smokers in the hospital are respiratory therapists. We said, how the hell are we going to ever hire any? So the second thing we did is we put on a big push about obesity. We changed the food in the cafeteria. We gave everybody free curves, free Weight Watchers, free access to our gym, free yoga. And ultimately, financial incentives in reducing their insurance. We've lost 500,000 pounds.
Wow, that's impressive.
5 million more to go.
How many have they kept off? So you're encouraging other companies to do this?
Yeah, I think that this is where it's going to come from. It's not going to come from government, I don't believe.
Yeah. We're running out of time, unfortunately. Let's just have one last quick question. If let's just assume ACA stays in place for the time being, if there were one policy change that could be made that the President and the Congress could agree on, what should it be? Each of you got an idea?
I'm going to go back to the theme I talked about before. If you eliminate these minimum health benefits and allow people not to buy catastrophic, instead of buying mental health, maternity, or contraceptive insurance that they really don't need, that could have a dramatic effect on insurance premiums. And relatedly, if you focus your efforts not on giving a one-size-fits-all premium package regardless of health, but incentivize people to lead healthier lifestyles by giving them a discount on their insurance if they've done the kinds of things that Dr. Cosgrove was talking about, then you'd have a twofer. You'd have somewhat lower costs and a somewhat healthier population that could hopefully bend this cost curve that I've been talking about.
Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, you've got your marching orders. Eat less, no smoking, move. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. You've been a wonderful panel. I appreciate you participating.
Thank you.
This is going to be an election that's based on competence.
I think this is a temporary sort of loss of sanity, but we're going to come back to our senses and look for somebody serious to lead the country at some point.
You know, there are many things that I am prepared to speak about, but I am not prepared to predict the behavior of Donald Trump.
Stay in the race, just stop being a jackass.
Honestly, Donald Trump needs no help from Mike Huckabee to get publicity. He's doing a really good job of that.
I'm going to talk about what I'm for, but when it comes to attacking an American hero, I'm going to call that out. I denounce Donald Trump for that. He needs to apologize to Senator McCain and all the other men and women who've worn the uniform. That's just a disgrace.
He's never held public office, and we've had 2 people in 150 years, Dwight Eisenhower and U.S. Grant, who hadn't held public office. The media loves us. I mean, look what we're talking about.
We should not, through outrageous comments, let off the hook those people that don't want to have that debate. And so all they do is focus on what Trump said and distract from the real issue, which is the fact that we have legal immigration laws that are not being enforced.
I am proud to stand with Donald Trump. I like him and respect him. And let me point out, there's a reason why so many Republican 2016 candidates are attacking Trump. because they haven't been speaking out on the need to secure the border.
I just think that we need to be much more hopeful and optimistic about our ideology. We should focus on that and not get into a food fight that only brings energy to someone who I doubt will be president.
I guess that's my cue. So I will use that as my cue. Hello, everybody. I'm Chuck Todd of NBC News, and so we're here to explain why it is not our fault that Donald Trump is leading. There she is. I was like, I know we're short one.
Sorry.
You know, thank goodness you don't do this on Sundays
Yeah.
with me. You know. A quick introduction: Karen Tumulty of the Washington Post. Peter Hamby works at the place that your 8 and 9 and 10-year-olds love, Snapchat. I'm just kidding. He's going to tell us why we're all idiots and troglodytes about social media and Snapchat.
Sure.
Peter is one of the great new generation of reporters, in all honesty. Was at CNN before, and CNN no longer covers politics because Peter has left.
Whoa.
I think.
No
Did,
comment.
say that? Did I say that out loud? Them fighting words? Them fighting words? I'm sure they're covering the plane right now, right?
Yeah.
They are.
Oh. Come on, right? I don't work for them. I'm at Team NBC. Connie Schultz, the Cleveland Plain Dinner, great columnist.
Thank you.
Very popular here. And Kathleen Parker, also of the Washington Post, who a playful column this morning, and in fact, on our top topic. So I'm going to throw it out here. Who created Donald Trump, Karen? Did we in the media, there have been all sorts of studies, we at NBC have covered him more than any other network. Are we promoting this? Are we covering a story that should be covered? How much is it the media's fault for Donald Trump?
Oh, it's a story. I mean, we have no choice but to cover it. And I think Donald Trump created Donald Trump. And, you know, right now it's his world and the rest of us are just living in it.
It's a huge world.
It's huge. Everyone tells me.
That's right.
But you know, there was a little bit of hand wringing in the media at the beginning of this phenomenon as to, you know, and we had, you know, various outlets, Huffington Post saying, oh, we're gonna put an entertainment tag on this, not a political tag. But that doesn't mean they're not covering it as much as they were. Again, he is a vessel for something that is going on in the Republican Party. He is a vessel for something that is going on in this country. And I think it is absolutely appropriate for us to be trying to figure this out.
Peter, should we be news snobs?
I agree with Karen that I think we were in the beginning. I think she's right that there is a mix of things going on. There's just this really deep-seated anti-establishment passion in the country that he's tapping into. And two, there's just an incentive structure in the political process of 2015 and 2016 that rewards, you know, big talk and controversy and gaffes, and we in the media cover it. And I think there is a level.
We cover it or give him too many tools to expose it?
We give him the opportunity. You know, we live in the digital era. He's got his own tools to do it too. I think that there's this strain of thinking in the political media that you know, the process is better than this. But that's not true. Like the campaigns have always been about personalities and gaffes and not issues.
Mama,
not
where's
substance.
my pa?
Right.
Yeah, that was in the 19th century.
I don't remember that.
That's all right. I got a laugh from
do.
Dan Balls, though,
Yeah.
I think.
But yeah, we should be covering it. We absolutely should be covering it. He's leading the Republican polls. He's tapping into something out there that's actually very real and has been, you know, in the bloodstream for many years now. And it says something about the GOP, absolutely.
Connie, what about the progressive movement? Should they learn from Donald Trump right now?
I think the progressive movement is enjoying watching this play out. You know, by the way, I'm not with the Plain Dealer. I'm nationally syndicated with Creators, and I just want to make sure, because I'm sure the Plain Dealer.
I know you from the Plain Dealer.
Yes, right. Well, being in the battleground state of Ohio, I love saying that, where no Republican has ever won the presidency, without winning Ohio, and only 2 Democrats ever have. I find it interesting as a columnist, a liberal columnist in Ohio, watching what the progressives are saying, but also watching what a lot of conservatives in the middle of the road, because I run a public Facebook page. I have about 135,000 followers. I recognize many of you in the audience here today from my page. Thank you for that. But as you know, those of you in the audience, we have a lot of conversations every day, and many of them are about politics. And the thing I'm a little concerned about as a member of the media is this room is exceptional in that you already care what's happening in the presidential race. If I could cite one mantra that keeps surfacing in any discussion about any candidate, it's why are we doing this so early? Why does anybody care yet? And I think for a lot of Ohioans, Trump is really, at best, entertaining. He's insulting for a lot of people. But it was interesting watching the first panel, I think it was. I don't think the Democrats can take Ohio for granted for a second. When Hillary Clinton won the primary in Ohio in 2008, she won with a lot of white working class males who suddenly, I do not believe, became feminists. They were not voting for a black man. So this field is wide open here, and there's a lot of work to be done in Ohio.
You know, Kathleen, Chris had said something about the new media that we live in, the culture that we live in, meaning that it's sort of how quickly we cover these things. I saw a tracking poll, and it was an online tracking poll, I'm not crazy about it, that Reuters does, but it was interesting to me that Mike Huckabee, the week he made his oven comment about the Iran deal, about leading Israelis to the oven, he went from 4% to 11%. It meant that he was rewarded. He got more coverage than he had gotten in 2 months.
Yeah.
I mean, are we creating like I said, Peter just put it, I'm sorry, I have a good friend of mine named Chris Hamby, and I always call
not related.
Chris, so my apologies, Peter. Is our media culture now basically this is how you get coverage?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, if you say something that's newsworthy, you're going to get coverage. But I would like to go back to the other question for just a second about Trump. It's all connected. But, you know, I think actually that Donald Trump was inevitable in a weird way. You know, because this blending of...
The person or the idea?
The idea, because he's not a person, no.
By the way, my favorite theory, a friend of mine said, he's actually Andy Kaufman.
Yeah.
And someday he'll rip his mask off, and it's been a 25-year hoax.
There you go.
Anyway,
he's a great big idea called Trump, and you know we're all in Trump world now. But basically, what I'm saying is that when we've sort of merged the worlds of celebrity and politics and entertainment, and if you were going to feed all those into a computer, those facets of our culture, I think it would spit out Donald Trump. You know, it would be like Beetlejuice. You know, kind of. Suddenly just emerges in full living color. But, you know, as to whether we participate in that, there's just no possible way we could ignore Donald Trump as he is now the front runner. You know, he just simply has to be covered. Initially, I'm not so sure. There might have been an argument for just... you know, he's a huge personality. I just was talking to some media from Australia, and they're here to do Donald Trump because he's known all over the world. He's a big deal, and when Trump does something, it's a big Trump thing. So I think we do participate to some extent, but I don't think we can be blamed for Donald Trump. And
but the press has such agency, though. Like, we're not just dispassionate observers of this campaign, just sort of standing back. Like,
wait a minute. Why? Why aren't we dispassionate observers? I still fight to try to be a dispassionate observer, I think.
You were one of the good ones.
I think Karen does. I feel like you fight to be a dispassionate observer.
But I also think that the nature of the media today, you bring up the Mike Huckabee thing. I mean, he said something that was designed to do exactly what it did. But the nature of the media today, the different channels, is that with Twitter and everything else, it tends to make small things look big and big things look small.
True.
And so you can get that bump. And it will suddenly look like it's, you know,
someone's always going to cover it.
The world. Yeah,
Matt Rhodes, Romney's former campaign manager, always said, a link is a link, right? Whether it's from Red State or the New York Times,
where it was from.
BuzzFeed, it hits Twitter, it takes off, game over.
Did any of you leave your office to run for president anymore? Donald Trump is sitting in his office in New York orchestrating this entire thing.
It's very early. Did anybody see the National Journal story? I think it was earlier this week.
You know it's late compared to 08, though?
So the reporter trying to set up an interview with serious questions for Donald Trump, and he could not get the interview. That is so instructive in this moment.
But however, my colleague David Fahrenthold at the Washington Post did the same story, and the fact is, maybe Donald Trump didn't sit down with a National Journal reporter, but David Fahrenthold took all of his public utterances, and I mean, it isn't like that guy is not sitting down for a lot of interviews. I can't get away from him.
Well, I was just going to say, and in fact, and this is something, and I don't, you know, the media's role in this, but Trump is taking what McCain did in 2000, and he's taking it to another level. He doesn't say no to anybody. I've been tough on him. He'll come right on.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that's going to play well.
How long can he keep that up?
I think we're all going to be feeling a little silly in about 2 months from now, is my guess, that we had so much
I was where you were a month ago. I don't know if I'm there anymore.
I just don't, well, I guess I'm talking to voters a lot and talking to regular people. I don't mean you aren't. I just mean I hear from them. I'm easy to find and I'm accessible, so I'm hearing from them a lot. And most people, certainly in this state who are paying attention at all, want to start having some serious discussions about issues. Nobody tonight, unless I missed it when I stepped out to get Mike, has talked about what's happening with Planned Parenthood, for example. And that is an enormous issue. And if you want to talk about health care, a lot of people in this state, the hundreds of thousands who now have coverage, want to know who's going to lose it if you're going to take the coverage away. Who with the pre-existing condition?
It's interesting you bring up the Planned Parenthood thing, because I think there's an aspect of this story that I wonder if we're going to hit to another level, which is this idea that the ends justify the means type of political advocacy, right? This is a designed political hit, right, on Planned Parenthood. This is sort of like, we can't win the fight this way, we're going to try to win the fight another way. And other advocacy groups will try to do the same thing. It's sort of the you know, in the environmental movement, right? You had very environmental, you know, activists that said, no, let's chain ourselves to things, let's fight.
But those were publicity stunts designed to get media attention. Now it's create your own content, put it out there, and we're forced to cover it.
But I predict one question you're going to hear tomorrow night in some form or another, and it may be the raise your hands, will be, would you shut down the government to defund Planned Parenthood?
There's no doubt that question's going to
And you know, everybody in the Republican field has just gone to DEFCON.
Oh, I agree. My column I just filed, and I said, at least, you know, they've been really early this time. We know exactly where they stand on women. They don't care. And what I don't understand is why we keep casting this question as a women's issue. If you love any woman in your life, shouldn't you be caring about our health? If you care about how the country is run, don't you want the women folk to be strong and sturdy?
Oh, goodness.
Unfortunately, we won't hear from the only woman in the field tomorrow night because Fox has decided that they're only going to have 10 of them, which again is the media picking and choosing winners. And you say it's early.
But by the way, well, you want to get me started on this?
Yeah, go.
Let's say NBC News had the first debate. Let's say NBC News decided which 10 we're going to get in and which 7 weren't. What do you think the conservative uproar would be, Mr. Hamby?
Just a little bit?
Just a little bit? It is amazing that Fox has decided to just deem who's first tier and who's second tier.
It is actually ridiculous, especially this early when candidates are depending on this kind of attention to raise money and make the kind of
What would you have done with 17 candidates, Kathleen?
Well,
what would you have done?
You cannot put them all on the stage.
Why?
Correct.
Why?
Because Dan Baltz just wrote a story from New Hampshire where they had all but 3 on the stage, and you had essentially, it was a cattle call. You had a minute to say, hi, you know, I'm Jeb Bush. And, you know, it has a very minimizing effect also on each of these individuals.
But it's minimizing people like Rick Perry and Lindsey Graham,
it's terrible,
who are
but
really capable people who aren't allowed on the debate
There's a
stage.
different way to do it, perhaps. But Bloomberg came up with another formula that considers all kinds of other factors, not just where they are in the polls that day.
So what, we want to do sabermetrics
Yes,
to decide?
I mean, it was more interesting to me.
Moneyballing.
Than just, okay, nobody knows who you are yet, so we're going to make sure they really don't know who you are. No, I think it's terrible, but I don't know how you manage it. And Baltz's conclusion was, what was obvious is that you couldn't possibly have all those people on the stage and have a debate of any value. I mean, now they're...
The only thing I can think of they could have done is just split it into 2.
Well,
2 nights.
Debates.
Just have 2 nights. By the way,
And
it's
random.
Random. make sure Trump's on the second night, right? So you don't like lose. No, I mean, you build it up. You be a programmer, right? Why not?
Yeah.
I want to go to the role of social media because everybody wants to figure it out. Peter, you have to be our expert here. I'm teasing you about Snapchat, but this is, everybody's going to want to dub this election something, right? You know, if 12 was, you know, I guess 2008 was more of a Facebook election. 2012 was a little more of a Twitter election. What is this going to be? Is it the sort of the idea of always on journalism, always on campaign? You get to come in at any point in time and watch it when you want?
I think the appropriate thing, if there's to be a moniker, is the mobile election. You know, 4 years ago, people spent less than 1% of their daily screen time, television, computer, whatever, on mobile. Now, it's 30% of your day.
What will it be next year? Forget, like, probably in the actual election year.
30, 40. Again, not to shamelessly plug something like Snapchat, but 60% of U.S. smartphone users between 18 and 34 are on Snapchat. That is where young people are living right now. People are watching 3 billion videos a day on Snapchat. And a lot of us in this room are like, what is Snapchat? I don't get it. I'm happy to do explainers for everyone in the lobby afterwards. But go ask a kid at Ohio State if they have a TV in their dorm room. Guess what? They don't. They don't know. Ask them when the last time they watched CNN, NBC, read the Washington Post was. I don't know.
But they've probably seen the content. But they just don't know.
On Facebook, they don't
That's
know.
what I mean. They don't know where the content is.
Right. So the larger point is that, you know, with Snapchat specifically, this is a young, kind of hard-to-reach audience in an increasingly fragmented media ecosystem, even more so than when the Obama campaign pioneered targeting. So it is just, phones are where people are living now. Think about your own behavior and your own phone use. So it's becoming incumbent upon campaigns to meet people there.
And so we should do the same?
Yeah, I think so.
How's it changed how you get, you've been a political reporter and for a long time through many technologies.
And I love them all in that everyone is another way to get information into people's hands. But what I mourn is the degree to which it has made it possible for the candidates to put themselves at a remove from us. It's like all the candidates are under shrink wrap these days. You rarely see an extemporaneous reaction to something, or, you know, a real sort of authentic answer to anything. And so the challenge for us, and it's getting harder and harder, is to come up with ways to write about these people that are surprising and that tell you something about them that you already didn't know from the 9 videos they put out today.
Right. You know, Connie, I had one of my great fears that the unintended consequence of the 47% video was going to be that we would never hear a candidate utter anything remotely interesting ever again.
Well, since we've seen Ted Cruz wrap bacon around a gun, I think your fears could be put to rest.
Yeah, but was that interesting?
Was
was that like telling about what they think about the role of government? That's what I mean.
I would say, sure. That revealed quite a moment for me to watch him do that. If
to
he
eat bacon off a gun?
And to be leader of the free world, thinking that was the way to get there. But I agree with you on this, but you know what that video also tells you? That if you're not going to let media cover these candidates, you're going to have your citizen journalists, you're going to have your attendees at different events. They're going to start doing it, and they can download it. You know that from
Well, this
Snapchat.
happened with Snapchat recently, actually. I like this anecdote. We have local stories running in a variety of cities around the country 24/7, and it's all user-generated content, right? So they submit to the story, we curate it and push it out. One of the curators walked over to me a month ago in New York and said, "Hey, Peter, we got these snaps coming from Hillary Clinton in Chicago. Can you come take a look?" And it turns out she was in literally a closed-door fundraiser at a hotel in downtown Chicago, and some donor was just snapping away. And she didn't say anything. I watched all of them. She didn't say anything 47%-ish in there, but someone will, and someone will catch
Hillary
it.
Clinton.
No.
No one.
But this goes to Karen, I mean, between what Karen just said about shrink wrap Kathleen and my fear of how every candidate now, 47%, it's so calculated. What is our role anymore? If we can't puncture it, how how's the average voter supposed to be able to puncture this?
Well, the average voter probably has greater access to those moments than we do at this point, as people are traveling around. But I've noticed that people are don't you think these candidates have become a little bit kind of hysterical almost? I mean, the bacon around the gun, the smashing of the phone. I mean, what were some of the other antics? I mean, it's just...
Chainsaw. It's a chainsaw in the tax code.
Kind of like,
That was really impressive, I thought.
I mean, it's really kind of...
Cutting through paper.
I don't know. It says something
tough,
terrible about where we are just as a culture, because I do think now that everyone can be a star, everyone can be the star of his or her own movie, everyone can be the citizen journalist, anybody can get media attention by doing something bizarre, that even our candidates have sort of lost their grounding.
I guess that's why I'm hopeful for us in our roles as columnists, because we're allowed to bring a viewpoint to this, and we're allowed to call them out when it's getting ridiculous. And I certainly hear from campaigns when I do that, and I know they can be very sensitive to it. And then if you post in forums where readers can participate in a civil discussion, which is why I started the Facebook forum 7 years ago, because these are cesspools on news sites.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to wade in there. If you want to hear from thoughtful readers, start moderating the comments, and then candidates start paying attention. And I'm hoping that's something we can do more.
I'm looking forward to, is it Scott Brown who's coming back to New Hampshire very soon to ride on a Harley Davidson?
Walker.
Scott Walker and Scott Brown on a Harley Davidson, because that'll prove something. Manhood, I guess.
We're going to have the easiest jobs in the country.
I know, we have the best jobs in the country.
So we are on a bit of a tight schedule, so I want to close with this. How should the media decide how tomorrow night's, and I say decide, this idea, but there will be this collective assumption of who did well and who didn't. How will it be done? Will it be based on zingers, based on body language? Karen, what do you think it's going to be?
With that many people on the stage, and this is going to sound like a terrible thing to say, it's going to be zingers and gaffes. And it is going to be who grabs the moment or moments, maybe 2 or 3 of them, that people are still talking about the next day. Are you going to learn anything about these people? I suggest probably not.
All right, before I go down the line and ask everything, and where, by the time your Washington Post story is filed, it's sort of added to and all this stuff, how much of the first debate do you think will be in that story?
How much of the first debate? Yeah. We are doing separate stories on the first debate, and also it's like the print paper it's the tail, it's not the dog anymore.
No, I understand that, but in the big story about the debate, the first, about the big event in Cleveland,
right.
Will the first debate get like also attending
No, but there will be into the evening, there will be, when it's still fresh, plenty.
I remember I was in 24 press files last cycle, wrote 24 debate rap stories, and both my own and others, half an hour, 1 hour into a 2-hour debate, leads were written, stories were already flowing. Rick Perry could have made news in the last, except for Oops. Oops came in the second hour of that debate. But
no, Oops was early.
Really?
I was in the control room for that because I remember
CNBC debate.
The debate was going. The debate was just like the executives are going, this is not very lively. Nothing's happening. Oops happened, and I said, you got your lead. It doesn't matter what it is anymore. We know what this debate's going to be known. How do you think we'll do it, and how should it be done?
I'll tell you how I'm going to do it. I'm going to we're going to be on Facebook, and I'm going to get live reaction from people. And I'm going to tell them ahead of time, we can't make fun of them. Yeah, I want to see what you're thinking about what they're saying. And that's Twitter, it's journalists talking to other journalists a lot. And I go there for breaking news. I want to hear from people who are actually watching the debate and see what they think. And then I'll decide what I thought based on their reactions in part.
Well, I never know what I'm going to do, but I have to write a column for Sunday tomorrow before noon on Friday. So I think I'm going to, as a fan of underdogs, I'm probably going to cover the baby debate.
How does it not end up being, I just think about how my producers are going to think at the different shows, and it's going to be, well, how did Trump do? Like the television story is going to end up being some form of Trump or how people played off of him. Isn't that going to
Wouldn't it be a fun story to write and not mention him?
To try it. Well, no, somebody should try it.
Just to show what everyone else said.
Well, someone should follow Bobby Jindal around tomorrow. Just spend the day with
that'd
him.
be fun too, yeah.
Or whatever, someone who's not going to get any attention.
Right.
Be like, what are you doing today?
I suggested to our folks, I said, you know what I'd love to have? ISO cameras on every candidate so that you could actually, as a viewer, decide, I only want to watch John Kasich. because I want to see his facial expression.
That would get
as
tens
other
of
people.
viewers.
No, but you do it for everyone. In the same way, if you want to watch a football game, you get to watch it from the different points of view now if you go online. Should we be doing that with the debates?
And everybody will be watching Trump.
And then that's the story. Well, there you go.
I'm hearing from my progressive contingency here in Ohio. And they're not at all certain of this.
I can just tell you, we get, with the web, we get minute-by-minute feedback as to what people want to read about, and Donald Trump is catnip.
Yeah.
Worst thing to happen. Welcome, can I just tell you, welcome to the criticism that television got 20 years ago. Television's being driven by ratings.
Oh,
it is worse
that's interesting.
on digital, isn't it?
That's a really good. We're all in it
Worse
now.
on digital. Everybody is driven by ratings. You have one more word? I'm going to
I was
shut
just
it
going to
down.
say, the one other thought I've had about Trump is that he reminds me of Sarah Palin in this respect. The reaction to him and to her has been, look, we don't care that she doesn't know anything. We don't care that he doesn't have any policy ideas. We just like the way they talk, you know? And of course with her, the way she winked, right?
You just wanted to do that.
Well, I hadn't thought of it.
Well, all right.
I would have worn my red shoes if I had.
Fair enough. On that note, thanks very much. Thanks to a great panel, Karen, Peter, Connie, Kathleen.
Thank you.
And how did we do, Lois? We do okay? A little over.
That's great. You're great. And I don't think I'm hot here. Okay, thank you all so much. This was a great, great evening. And I have one very important announcement. The bar is still open.
All right.
Good night.